Brilliant. Thank you so much. Well, I am absolutely delighted tonight. This is our final session and we're ending with a bang. So we have Delia and Rachel. Delia is about to graduate very soon and she works as our Open Justice Intern. So she's going to share some of her experience as coming to the end of her degree and thinking about what she might do next and talking about her role as an Open Justice Intern. She also studied W360 last year, so she'll talk a little bit about her experience of studying that module and kind of how it might help if you're thinking about a legal career. And I'm also very, very delighted to welcome back Rachel, who is an OU alumni. So she has graduated from the Open University and now is incredibly successful working in legal practice. So she's going to talk a little bit about her journey to becoming a solicitor, and she's going to talk, and she's also studied W360 as well, so can share a little bit about her experience and the things that she's done to help her get to the position that she's in now. So I'm really delighted for both of them to be here tonight, and I think we'll have a fantastic session. I have some questions that I'm going to put to Rachel and to Delia, but please feel free to put other questions in the chat and we will get to them. Sometimes I might ask them as we go along, or we will have a bit of time to answer questions, but feel free to put in any questions that you've got, and we'll try and get through as many of them as possible. So Delia, just want to tell us a little bit about you and your journey and how you ended up as an Open Justice Intern.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming along. I started studying at the OU in 2021, and it's been a very long journey. I've finally come to the end, and I'm still awaiting, I think, one of my results. I decided to apply for the Open Justice internship because after I started doing the module where you actually take on a legal project that is a justice in action project, and it's framed around helping a specific task that's going to benefit the public. And our project was to do with designing a legal chatbot. My specific project was designing, I decided to do a EHCP chatbot, and the EHCP is the Education, Health and Care Plan for parents that have children with additional needs. And from that chatbot I designed with the Open Justice project that I was in, I actually won the in-service award, which was quite a shock, still is quite a shock. And that actually led on to me volunteering with a national charity and working with them to fully design the EHC chatbot for parents to use within the UK, well, specifically England and Wales, that it would actually apply to. I decided to apply for the role with the Open Justice Centre because I wanted some hands-on experience, and it's been absolutely amazing. And I'm currently the person who produces the podcast for the Open Justice Centre. So that's
Brilliant.
a little bit about me.
Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And just to say as well, the Open Justice Internship is a paid internship, isn't it? So
Yes,
it's one we have every single year, and hopefully we'll continue to have them. But it's a great opportunity to get paid while you're doing some studying as well. Rachel, will you tell us a little bit about your journey from being an Open University law student to being this fantastic qualified lawyer now?
Thank you, Francine. Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to be here with everyone. I always love coming back to the Open University. I have such fond memories of it. So I studied from 2018 to 2021 through very unprecedented times of COVID-19. And I must say the last year and a bit were very challenging. At that time, I had two small children who I was homeschooling. I was a full-time undergraduate student. I also ran a business, which I had to run out of my bedroom for 18 months. So I would be studying till 3 o'clock in the morning and then get up and try and homeschool my children, one of which completely disengaged. So the last bit of that study was very challenging. However, I was really proud of myself to qualify with a first class honours degree. And I must say the memories of a W360, Francine, come back to me, because, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit, about work experience and the importance of it. But at that time, everybody had kind of closed off the channels because you weren't able to go and do real-time work experience. So I had to really draw, number one, upon my transferable business skills, but also my experience in the Open Justice Centre allowed me to be able to talk about that during interviews, that I'd actually interacted with members of the public and done practice work. And I think secondary to that as well, it also allowed me to demonstrate that I had knowledge of case software management systems, which I'm sure everyone knows is the norm in law firms. So I graduated from OU, and I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to finish my study at the University of Law on their LPC. So I was one of the last cohorts through that system. Obviously, we're now onto the SQE. And then I thought, right, what am I going to do now? So I had been building my LinkedIn profile continuously through that time, and fortunately, a recruiter reached out to me and saw the practice areas that I was interested in and said, I know a firm that would be really interested in you, and I think you would be interested in them. And by that time, I think I'd done about 150 applications. So I went along to a firm that's 9 miles away from my house. However, they also have an office in London, which was kind of an extra draw for me, and it was perfect. And I remember sitting there in the interview thinking, this is right for me. So to cut a long story short, they took me on as a trainee. I was their first ever trainee. I qualified in 2024, and it's quite a small team. We have a very niche area of law. We deal with a lot of false allegation work. So I am a litigation criminal defense lawyer. I do some education work. So Delia, I was interested to hear about your bot for the ECHP. And I also developed the first podcast for the firm and do business development and networking for them.
Brilliant. And can I just ask, in terms of the kind of areas of law, are those the areas of law you'd wanted to practice in?
Yes.
So that was always your kind of interest?
Yeah, so I was really interested in criminal law, and I had to fight at the University of Law to get the thesis that I wanted to do for my master's, because a lot of the time people aren't encouraging students to go that direction for one reason or another. But I knew that was an area that I was really passionate about, but I couldn't see myself in the legal aid world with my own family situation, having children. I couldn't be thinking of getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go to a police station. But the work that I undertake is all private work. So we deal with high profile clients.
Right.
Well, it's not 9 to 5. I'd be lying if I said that, but it's not 2 o'clock in the morning. So it's very detailed work. It allows me to apply my legal knowledge and really challenge myself. But yeah, I mean, in the main, that was what I wanted to do.
Fantastic. So Delia, can you just tell me a little bit about the things that you've been doing, how your kind of day works out, combining your studies and finishing your studies and doing your internship? What does a typical day, if such a thing exists, for you?
Well, oh, thank you. A typical day as a student and a mum and an intern, there isn't one. There isn't one whatsoever. Obviously, I have family commitments, so I've got a son who is disabled, so his needs would come first. With the internship that I'm doing, my day usually starts with me laptop on, checking emails, haranguing people to come on the podcast and share their stories. And then a lot of it is to do with researching the people that I'm going to be interviewing, finding out different angles, what their journey has been, what they're currently what roles they're working in, how I can relate that to students as well. And coming up with some fantastic questions to ask them and keep them engaged and keep listeners engaged. And currently, at the moment, I've been editing the episodes, so I'm leaning a lot into learning the technical skills. And I've been telling friends that I've been listening to Podcasting for Dummies just to try and upskill myself in understanding how to produce a podcast. So there's been a range of skills that I've been doing, and just a varied things. Also attending meetings as well. Meeting the head of the OU, which was kind of daunting, but also learning a lot of skills through the internship, and it's quite a varied role. And as a student, I'm so glad I applied. So if you're out there and you're thinking of applying, absolutely do it. It's transformative.
And had you done any podcasting before, or done any editing of podcasts?
No. So,
so these are new things you've been developing.
Completely new. My first round at university, I did actually study computing, so I would say, literate in that field, and I used to design websites as well. So I had some knowledge, but not podcasting. If you said, Delia, go off and design a website, I could do it with my eyes closed. But a podcast, it's much different. You're using different skills. You're using communication, professionalism. There's a whole range of skills and research as well. And I do actually started a mini podcast for my son who does karting. So it's kind of transferred into other things in
Brilliant.
my personal life as well.
Fantastic. Rachel, can you talk? I know there's definitely no typical day for you, particularly if you're doing criminal defence work. But can you talk us through kind of what your days look like and the kind of things that you do kind of on a day-to-day basis? And is that what you expected as a law student going into practice, or has it been very different than you expected?
No, it's been exactly how I expected it, and even better.
Brilliant.
So no 2 days, you're absolutely right, Francine. There isn't a day that's the same. You may go in with a plan to do something, you get a phone call and completely something else will happen. Like I said, because the work is private, it's not so much as dropping everything and going to the police station. And we deal with some very complex matters up to Crown Court and beyond. So a lot of that can be a lot of case preparation, evidence building and gathering. But typically I would be in the office kind of 8:30 to 9, look at my diary that I've set the night before and realizing actually all of that has to come out because this has now happened. Being really alert to what's happening with clients. And I think one of the things, the more you practice, the better you get at what you do. I always think life is a rehearsal. So I think when I first went into practice, and when I first qualified, I was thinking, how could I handle this massive amount of work? Because the workload does go up when you qualify, because the expectation grows. But gradually you manage it and you learn to prioritize what is important, which I think, going back to university, prioritizing those study deadlines where you have to get assignments in, and thinking about how you can plan your day and how things work so you get the priority tasks achieved. Those skills really set you up for when you go into legal practice, where somebody will say to you, okay, you've got Mr. B, Mr. X and Mrs. C, you have to deal with all of those. You have to learn, okay, what's the most important task first, and then prioritize in that order. So my day can look very much like some client work. I do business development, podcasting, and also might be networking meetings. So you have to kind of factor all of those in. So my days are, I'm not going to lie, my days are crazy, but I always go home with a smile on my face.
Fantastic. And can you just tell us a little bit about how your training contract worked and what kind of seats you did through your training contract? Because I'm sure the students on the call would be interested to know, like, you do this period of time where you're shadowing, but you're also doing lots of hands-on work. So how hands-on did they let you become as a trainee?
Very hands-on. So I work for a small team. We're a team of 17, and then we have consultants. And it was because I was their first trainee, I was their pilot project in a sense. And a lot of the work that I had was very hands-on, and always has been. And although I was supervised, it was a gradual letting go of the reins. So I always knew I could turn to my senior partners with questions, and I still can. But I think when you're a trainee, it's about getting exposure to everything. I worked primarily in criminal litigation, but I also did a bit of education, which I still retain now in practice. I did a little bit of private client, some civil work. I did a divorce. A lot of the areas in the firm overlap. So you might have someone that has allegations against them. That might be a family matter, turns into a probate matter. So it's important to kind of have an understanding of those areas. But I didn't do a traditional 6-seat maneuver in a firm, because we're a specialist niche area, which is why I went into it.
Yeah, Absolutely. And I think sometimes, depending on the firm, sometimes you do very discrete, sort of 6 months in each thing. Some firms do something a little bit different depending on the type of firm
Yeah.
that it is. And
And I
so,
think it's important to ask those questions when you get interviews as to how frameworks operate and what the structures are, and so your expectations will be met.
yeah, absolutely. Because I think that's, and also if you've got particular areas of law that you're interested in as well, I think
Mm,
that's important because you might not necessarily get exposure to those areas of law. So you've got to
mm,
be careful that you've done your research. Brilliant.
exactly.
Thank you, Rachel. Delia, do you know what you want to do next, or are you still in that point in your kind of journey of thinking about what does next look like?
I'll be completely honest with you, and I'm still thinking about it. I'm still thinking about it. I do want to focus on more community projects and looking into volunteering roles. The charity that I'm working with now, that is taking up a bit of my time. Obviously doing a lot of research for them and helping them plan how this chatbot is actually going to be developed and pushed out to parents. I also like to start little side quests here and there. So I've started not quite a charity, but it's some parents that I'm working with who have children who are no longer in education. And so I've just been advising them on how to progress and sort out their issues, whether that's a Section 19 for their child, which is getting them to have some form of an education from the local authority, also helping them understand the legal frameworks of how child education actually works and what they should be asking for. So I know at the end of the day, I'm probably going to develop further into this field,
Hmm.
into SEND, into children and education. But at the moment, I'm just looking for, I would say, more of like a paralegal role or a legal role
Hmm.
that is within that, because that is my passion.
Brilliant. I think it's really important to know what your passion is, isn't it? Because
Yes,
I
it
think
doesn't feel like work.
no,
It doesn't
absolutely.
feel like work, and yeah, and then you at the end of the day you see the families that you help, and it's very rewarding, to say, okay, I've actually bridged the gap for them and they're a little bit further on in their journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really good. And Rachel, has surprised you most about working as a lawyer compared to perhaps your expectations as a law student, or what has just surprised you working as a lawyer?
I think I mean I've always been a very passionate person. I've never done anything unless I was passionate about it, but I think I work with people whose liberty is at stake, and that takes on a whole new meaning of when you achieve a good outcome for a client, because that could mean the difference between them losing their liberty or them walking away free.
Mhm.
Um, and so that reward when you do get a successful outcome, that outshines everything. I think what surprises me is how collaborative people are. And you sometimes feel as a student that, gosh, I'm going to go into a role and everyone's going to expect that I have to know everything.
Mhm.
Nobody knows everything, and you will always know more than you think you know. And somebody once told me that you can say, oh, I've got 40 years experience as a lawyer, and you will hear that a lot. Um, but it's not necessarily about how much experience it's got, it's about the perspective you have.
Mm.
And if you bring a new perspective or something that is different to something else, somebody else to the table, um, I think that element surprises me, that people are willing to collaborate and people are willing to hear your ideas.
Mm.
You just have to ask those questions and get out there. Um, and I think I've learned as a lawyer in practice to always ask questions and always ask somebody else, well, what do you think of this? What would you do? Because it expands you and you grow from that
Mhm.
experience. You can't walk around thinking, I'm fine, I know everything, because you don't.
No. And do you think there was something about the fact that you came to this a bit later that gave you more confidence to be able to say, because people often worry about sort of not appearing to know everything, and you are totally right, you can't know everything about the law, and you have the skills to learn what that might look like. But do you think coming to the law a bit later gave you more confidence to be able to sort of ask questions and feel more confident in yourself?
Yes, because I had a whole host of transferable skills and I really had to rely on them because it was COVID. I didn't have any other option. And so I remember going for all these interviews and I'd have people say, well, why have you chosen law when you were a bit older? And I would sit there and I'd come out with some garbled reason. And then this Modern Gossip where I work now, I remember thinking, I'm actually over this. I'm going to go and be authentic, my authentic self. And I sat there and I remember sitting back and I knew the question would come because it came in every single interview. Oh, so, what made you want to study law when you were older? And I sat back and said, I always knew I was going to study law when I was older. I just needed to get all my creative and business things done first. And I just sat there and it felt so good because I actually owned it. So I think, yes, bringing all of your stuff and life experiences really does help you. But I think also it's about understanding that you're part of a much bigger picture and that to be able to be useful and fit in, you need to ask those questions to grow. And by doing so, it's like life is a rehearsal, isn't it? So the more you get confident with asking questions, the better you become at doing that.
Yeah.
I
And
hope that answers that question. I did
yeah,
go
no,
slightly off topic there,
no,
but
no, no, it's
mm,
perfect. And Shane's asked a question about work experience and finding work experience. So, Rachel, you've said that obviously you were in a time of COVID, and
mhm,
so therefore it was very difficult. And also you were working. So I've got a couple of questions related to that, and
mm,
then I'm going to ask Delia about this as well. Is um, what what skills did you already have that actually you used to help you in an interview as a lawyer for
mm,
the training contracts? Because I think sometimes students don't recognise they have a whole host of skills already that
yes.
might not be legal work experience, but actually are really relevant. So can you tell me a
Mm,
little bit about that, and then how you were able to use your experience on 360 if you because you didn't have work experience
mm.
directly to kind of showcase that legal aspect of what you were doing.
Absolutely. So I before I trained to be a lawyer, I was first off a professional dancer and then I went into martial arts. So I have my own taekwondo school, which I still run now. So all of my performance work enables you to have those skills to speak because that's what you've trained to do for years and years. And then I also have run businesses as well. I had a home and office removals business. It does sound like I kind of did scatter myself around the different professions. Um, but I think what I drew from is obviously being able to assert myself with my speaking skills and making eye contact and really having a think about what else I can bring to the table. And I think being a creative person, they always say to me at work, I have so many ideas, but when you're creative, you can bring those, and other people may not have those ideas. So they wanted to do a podcast, for example, and I said, great, right, know how to do it, put it all together. It launched in January, and there's something I want to mention about that, if I'm able,
Yes,
Francine,
please
towards
go
the end that
ahead.
I think
Yeah,
may
yeah.
help everybody. Um, but I think it's really having a think to yourself, what can I bring? What have I got? Because everybody has something, even if they've just worked in a cafe. I learned a lot from working in a cafe when I was 15. And I think it's that customer ability, being able to talk to people, because as a lawyer, you have to speak to clients, you have to be able to engage. And it's so much more than just talking about the law. It's these days, lawyers are expected to know their clients and what their clients' businesses are and their lives, because otherwise they can't talk to them on a humanistic level. So I think it's really about identifying what you have and how you can bring that into your mix and make that different. And if I could just add in a little piece on work experience, Francine, if I
Mm,
may.
mm,
So now I'm involved in the supervision and training of our work placements that we take. And I think what a lot of firms are doing now is that because they get a lot of CVs on paper, there's a lot of rejection that goes on before you've even got past the first stage, simply because they have overwhelming amounts of applicants. And I just want to tell a little story about my colleague who he qualified last year. He wasn't getting anywhere with work experience, with training contracts, and he came and knocked on the door in a suit with his CV in his hand and asked to speak to the senior partner. And the senior partner wasn't there, but somebody else was, and was so impressed they got him
mm.
in for a work placement. And then from that, he's now a qualified solicitor. So work experience placements, when they come to us, we can identify straight away if they'll work in our practice areas, because it needs a certain type of character for criminal work. And by observing them over, say, some are here for 3 months, some are 2 weeks. You can get to know that person, how they work, what their work ethic's like, if they understand commercial awareness. And from that, my firm is very much about taking those people on because they then know them. So my advice would be, and I think there's from Shane in the chat here, is to really approach law firms for work experience. I mean, I didn't get that opportunity, but I can see the value in it. That if you're known and law firms get to know you and know how you work, you've got a lot more chance of getting that training contract or that paralegal role that gets you into the SQE.
And also, I think you're a good example of the fact that you don't necessarily have to have had a straight work experience to get into a law firm. So there
No.
are lots of things, and I think it's important to recognise those kind of broader skills.
Mm.
And Delia, can I ask you, in terms of the Open Justice project that you got involved in, and then your connections with a charity, did you have those connections already, or did you develop those connections later? And how did you make that relationship with the charity that you then went on to assist with?
In a short answer, Google.
Oh, okay.
It was Google. So I was developing the W360 chatbot, and I just one day sat down and just typed in EHCP chatbot, and there they were. And I'm a firm believer in that opportunities will find you, and you just have to be very open to them and just say yes. And so I contacted the charity, and the lady who was organizing it got back to me, signed an NDA. The rest is history. I started volunteering with them. I would say to students looking, like as Shane has asked, looking for roles, work on your soft skills, work on your communication skills, work on professionalism, work on being able to be respectful, and just imagine yourself being in that environment and thinking, okay, what are the tasks that I'm going to be undertaking? Start working on those skills now. Start working on how you draft up emails, how you will speak in a meeting. Your confidence, it will come in time. I'm a firm believer in fake it until you make it. So you just put your best face on, your foot forward, and you go for it. The worst thing that can happen is people say no, and most of the time people actually say yes. They do want to take you on. They do want to hear your story. They are interested in you. So yeah, absolutely. Working your soft skills. I don't have any connections. Work on networking. If you don't have anybody in your family, read books, go online, find the information yourself. I mean, you're law students. You should be very good at researching. Research the areas that you want to work in. Imagine yourself there and put it into practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the story that Rachel gave and your story about Googling, you have to be brave and do things that are outside your comfort zone, don't you? And I think
Yes.
you have to be really, if you want this, you have to be really proactive. It's a really competitive market, whether you want to be paralegal, assistant, barrister, whatever. So the more that you can do to kind of to be brave and take those steps, the better that will be. Rachel, can I ask you a question around, because one of the things that I know that you're really good at is LinkedIn, and you really use LinkedIn really effectively. So can you just tell us a little bit about why you do that now? Because obviously now you're working as you have a job, etc. But what the value of LinkedIn has been in terms of building your profile and your networks.
And picking up from what Delia was saying, LinkedIn is so valuable for business connections. When the university talks about commercial awareness, what that means is that there's no proverbial money tree in the garden of a law firm. And at some point, your employers will expect you to go out and network and develop business and get clients or referrals. Part of my role at Monagos, it isn't just a defence lawyer. I also go out in business development for the whole firm. So that's every department. I found that LinkedIn in the first instance, when I was a student, was really helpful to connect me to recruiters. It showed who I was, And I think yesterday I had a really nice compliment for a lady at a networking event. She said, I keep telling my clients they need to be like you and show their personality. And that's something I think that comes from my creative background, because I don't see that as something that I've learned. That's just me. And obviously, I'm not trying to turn LinkedIn into Instagram anytime soon, but it's about having that nice balance of like, yes, I'm academic and I can really help you if you need a lawyer. But this is the other side of me. This is my business development. These are the people I've met, and gradually your connections will go. And I'm not boasting here, because I'm really not like that at all. But I got invited to a LinkedIn influencer event. Now, I didn't think that I'm not a LinkedIn influencer, I
I didn't
might
even know
add,
they had
not
such
compared
things.
with some of the people I
No.
met. So I was at A&O Shearman 2 weeks ago, and I kept pinching myself thinking, oh my gosh. But there were people there that have 30,000 followers. And a lady told a story. I think some people, I don't know if there's anyone as old as me on here, but I don't know if anybody remembers Grange Hill. It was
Oh, I remember Grange Hill.
yeah, so it was back in the 80s. So
Yeah.
this story, she was the very last speaker of the evening, and she'd gone on to LinkedIn and she'd found the guy that played now what was his name? The one that died of the drug overdose.
Zamo.
Zamo, that's it. So Zamo is now a locksmith in Purley Way in Croydon, and she'd found Zamo and connected with him, and she'd said, look, I've got a lot of women my age that would love us to have a picture. To cut a long story short, she got this picture with her and Zamo in the local locksmith. I think Zamo got a lot more customers and she got a lot more followers on LinkedIn. But the story and the moral of the story was that there's no such thing as a not a LinkedIn post, as in everybody can do it. And they were talking very much about find what's comfortable for you, and at first it might not be like, I want to be out there and pushing stories, etc., but you do need to engage and show a personality and a human side, as well as your legal savvy, and make those connections, because that's how you get recruited, that's how you get clients, that's how you build other areas of business. So I'd recommend wholeheartedly that start a LinkedIn profile. And if you do want to come and see mine, there's a really lovely podcast that I've just done with a leading King's Counsel, who's one of the most humble barristers I've ever met, and really, really top of his game. And I was lucky enough to interview him, and that's going to air on Monday. And he talks about what it's like being a barrister. So really, kind of no holds barred, talks about his journey through and what it's taken to get to where he has gotten to. And so I'd really recommend that if anybody wants to just get a little insight, have a look at that. And you can look at my name on LinkedIn. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But
Yeah.
I'm not a LinkedIn influencer yet.
But clearly,
Maybe next year.
clearly, you're on your way to becoming a LinkedIn influencer. But I think it is really important. And can I just ask, and you don't have to answer this question, but do you know whether you, like, for example, would your law firm look at, if they had prospective candidates, would they look at someone's,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Because lawyers and partners and law firm owners do not have time to look at paper. If they've heard a name or they've had someone for a workplace, they will be straight to LinkedIn to see what that person's profile is and what they've done. So, all of your experience is really important, and it doesn't have to be law related. It's showing that you're out there and you're willing to try.
yeah, brilliant. Thank you. That's really helpful. So going back to podcast, Delia, can you tell us a little bit about the people that you've spoken to so far and the people you're planning to speak to, and what that will kind of, how useful those conversations might be for some of our law students on the call and watching this back?
So at the moment, I've spoken to Gary Still. He was on, I think, yesterday. He's a social welfare lawyer, and he's absolutely amazing. Really, really fun to talk to. A wealth of knowledge as well. And we've got a bit more editing to do with his episode because I hit end when I shouldn't have. So he's going to be coming back on with me. I also have Liam Chin, who's been on, and I can't wait to interview him because I I've been bothering him with emails for the past 4 months, and he has absolutely agreed. So he's a criminal barrister, and he's going to have some fantastic stories to tell the students. Also, I have another lady who is a Silex legal professional, and I know it's going to be another fantastic episode. It's a route I don't think a lot of students tend to go for, so I'm hoping to impart some knowledge with everyone. I'm trying to think. Also, I have excuse me, another student who's done the W360 school tasking project, and so she'll be coming on and to talk about the project with other students. So if you haven't heard of like the Open Justice Centre and the different clinics that you can get involved in, absolutely have a look. If you're about to go into your third year, or if you're a first year student, have a look. It can really bridge the gap between your studies and actually learning what it's like working collaboratively in a group, and working with the public as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think all those people that what's really nice about the podcast is that you've got a lot longer time to talk to somebody, so you can really kind of find out some really interesting information about them. And I know that Liam is going to be great, and Liam can also talk about, he's a student that got a scholarship as well, so something to offer in that kind of way of going to the bar, because I know lots of students think about that. So do look out for those episodes, because they will be really brilliant. And also to Rachel's episode as well, because I think these are things that really help you get to understand how the profession works, also the differences between being a solicitor and a barrister. Rachel, did it make you want to think about doing more advocacy or doing solicitor advocate route at some point, speaking to your barrister, or are you still very committed to being the solicitor role?
I went through a stage when I first started where I wanted to be a barrister.
Right, okay.
Now, 100% not for me. I think it's a brilliant job. And the one thing I do miss is the advocacy that you do a lot more of as a barrister. But I think I'm a litigator, and as a solicitor, the engagement you have with clients is on a lot of a deeper level. As a barrister, you're very much going to be court-centered. And if you're a criminal barrister, you are here, there, and everywhere. So it doesn't make me want to be a barrister. I wouldn't rule out the possibility of the advocacy, the higher rights in the future, though, because I really do enjoy that. So I think that's a really key decision as well for students when you're deciding what route to follow. Are you a person that likes advocacy, and would you see yourself on your feet in court, or are you more litigation and client based and developing cases to then present to council?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think knowing that those differences as well. And again, Rachel, can I ask a bit about, you have a family, you've obviously studied, you've run businesses, and now you work as a lawyer. And how easy is it to manage, I don't know what a work-life balance is. I think that's a myth that we all would like to think exists but doesn't. But how do you find kind of this life as a lawyer, as well as all your other commitments outside of being a lawyer? Because you've just talked about the fact that you also have other interests as well beyond just being a lawyer. How does that all work in your world?
Yes. It's a work in progress, I might say.
Yeah.
So I have 3 children. One of them
Okay.
is older though, and I have 2 young ones. My Taekwondo school. So I work as a lawyer from Monday to Friday, unless there's some weekends thrown in there. I run my Taekwondo school on a Saturday morning and a Monday evening. And then if I'm away at court or at trial, that all has to fit together. So I think I've come to learn to compartmentalize things. I'm not an expert at that yet. It is a work in progress, and I think anyone with children, I'm sure you know, Delia, you mentioned at the beginning, it's always going to be a challenge, but there's always a way through it as well. So, plenty of roles in law are becoming more and more flexible. So I am lucky now that I'm more senior, that I'm able to work from home. And if I need to be at home for a childcare reason, my employers are happy for me to do that, because I think you prove your time, and if you're somebody that they trust will do the work wherever you are, you've got more chance of getting a flexible role. And I mean, there are so many roles that are hybrid, work from home. So I think that people with children or commitments, caring commitments, there is an opportunity there. It's a big world of law.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point, going back to the barrister point as well, because we had Julian King on Tuesday night, and he's a barrister, and he was very much, obviously that role is being, he's in court, he does a lot of criminal defence work as well, and I think that's the contrast, isn't it? If you're out at court all the time, then that just, you can't work from home. It doesn't,
No,
you can't be
no.
at home, and you know, so I think that for people to think about their kind of other responsibilities, to understand that there's not necessarily more flexibility as solicitor, but there might be more certainty of your day compared to being a barrister. Do you think that,
Mhm.
would you say that's fair, Rachel?
I'd say it's accurate. The reality, and I speak from the criminal bar perspective because they're the counsel, and I work mainly with
Yeah,
King's Counsel, who are more senior, so they do have a little bit more say. However, what I've learned is that when they have to go, when chambers tell them to go, you can't, if you wouldn't go and you said, well, I'm not going to take that job, they won't use you again. So there's
yeah.
a different competitive edge at the bar that I think needs consideration. And I do know a lot of great women counsel who do have
Hmm.
children and have made it work, but it is something to bear in mind. And I suppose as well, depend on your support system and who is going to help you when you're, if you're in Cardiff one day and London the next and somewhere else the next, you've got to make that work on the home front.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point about the area of law that you want to think about. And I think I
Mm,
would really
mm,
encourage students to think about that, because I think that JP might be able to put it in the link. We spoke last year to Laurie Elizabeth Ketley. She is a barrister. She has a son. She does family law. It's slightly different than saying criminal law, where it is very, very reactionary. So I think it's
mm,
really important to think about the area of law and the role
mm,
you're going to do. Annick has raised a question about finding relevant work experience and whether law centres are a good place to start. I would say law centres or citizens advice are brilliant places to go. So you can volunteer at citizens advice. They have lots of different opportunities in person and online as well. So definitely look at those. If people have questions, please feel free to put your hand up or to pop them in the chat, and I will happily ask questions to Rachel and to Delia. So if you've got other questions that we haven't covered so far, please pop them in the chat and we'll get to them. And Rachel, just wanted to ask you one thing about being a solicitor and working in practice. Could you just talk a little bit about chargeable time and what that means, and how that impacts on a life as being a lawyer?
absolutely. And there are a lot of discussions at the moment about the billable
Hmm.
time that a lawyer has to charge. So essentially, you have 6 minute increments that count as 1 unit, and you have a target. So I have a specific target of hours I have to achieve every week. Um, and you have to meet that target because you have to earn the firm a certain amount of money every month, because like I said, there's no money tree in the garden of a law firm. um that can create stress, and I think now I'm used to that now, and I know, understand how it works. In the beginning, when they say to you, this is what we have to do, and you're billing time, and for every email you draft, that's 1 unit, and you need to do a piece of work, and you've got to achieve 5 hours a day. It can feel very overwhelming, but you gradually learn to manage it. But it essentially is, you are billing by the unit, and you may do a piece of work for a client. It might take you 4 hours, and that might be your whole target for the day. You might have other days where you've got to do 15 different client matters. So it's that is how time is measured as a lawyer. Does that
Yeah,
help, Francine?
yeah,
I hope
it
that
is.
helps people.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognise that. I think for students about this thing about commercial awareness, and law firms
Mm,
are a business, and it is really important that you are helping people. But the reality of a law firm, or working as a barrister, working as a paralegal, is about making money for the firm, or as you as a barrister making your fees. and that is a big driver in law firms, and you've got to be comfortable being aware of that. And that doesn't matter what kind of firm, whether that's a legal aid firm or a big huge legal practice. There is you have to make money, and you have to be comfortable with that, don't you? Otherwise it is more than just helping people, isn't it, Rachel?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, there are some areas of law that are based on agreed fees or fixed fees, where the firm will agree a fee for a piece of work and it won't be billed per time that it takes you to do it. But a lot of firms are very much on this unit charging and billable time. And they expect that from you, and rightly so, because it isn't a charity, and clients are coming to you for your legal expertise, which you've all trained for years to provide. So, there is a cost to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic, thank you. And Delia, what from all the talking that you've had with the different people on the podcast and your own experience, what would you say to students if they're worried about they haven't got it all figured out yet? They don't know whether they want to be a solicitor, a barrister, or a paralegal, or something else.
Um, I would say, first of all, it's normal not to have everything figured out whatsoever. I've had several jobs. I've worked in retail, I've had my own business, I've worked for charities, I've done fundraising. So you just look at your skills and you think none of that's wasted. You pick up skills, as Rachel was saying earlier on, you pick up things as you go. They're all transferable skills. Um, I would say just enjoy the process of studying, fully commit to it, do your research, get involved in projects, network. Rachel's a LinkedIn professional, as we've heard. So definitely, and it's something that I've heard time and time again, LinkedIn is becoming, well, is increasingly, widening that platform of making links and networking with people. So it really is a great platform, and they actually have courses where you can learn how to improve your profile if you're a little bit worried about that as well. So I would say don't worry about it whatsoever. You can pivot your career. I would say just keep pushing yourself.
Yeah, and all the students that you've spoken to who are now graduates, who are now working, have all of them had a kind of wibbly wobbly journey to wherever they are?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Gary's journey, he said that he always wanted to work in criminal, and then he went and did it. I think he was there for a few months and realized, oh, this isn't for me. Absolutely. And so he then got a role working with Derbyshire Law Centre, and he's just recently been promoted as well, and he's really found his feet there. And he said the skills that he learned while studying at the OU really helped him in his current role, in his role there. So absolutely, everyone has a different journey. You never know what your journey is going to be. Change is inevitable. Just keep pushing yourself, push yourself through your comfort zone, and you will get there.
Yeah, and I think those are the things that people really need to sell. Liam was a chef before he became a
Yes.
criminal barrister, and actually, I think there is a lot of synergy between a chef and a criminal law barrister in terms of you've got to be able to take pressure. And so, actually, there is a real crossover there between those two roles. So, I think it's really important to kind of think about those skills that you've developed. And Rachel, when you're looking at applications for we're still having training contracts, even though we've got SQE or work experience. What kind of advice would you give to people thinking, and when you were going through those, if you made 150 applications, what advice would you give to people writing applications, writing CVs, and what sort of top tips could you share?
Absolutely. So your CV is your showcase. It's not a whole entire novel of your entire life. I think it's very important to be specific and tailor your CV and your cover letter to each application, even though that takes enormous amounts of time. And I remember how torturous it was when you'd spend a whole day on an application, never hear back from them again. However, it's a numbers game, and the more you do it, eventually it will pay off. So I think it's very much about tailoring. the CV should showcase your strongest points. So, for example, on my CV in the beginning, I had the Open Justice Centre was the top, and I was asked a lot about that experience because that demonstrated that I'd had practice work and the case software management. And then obviously your academic achievements and your work experience recent. Obviously, you don't need to put every single piece of work experience, but really the relevant things that are going to draw attention. And I do think it's useful to have a tagline on your CV of how you describe and summarize yourself. I can see Delia nodding her head there. Because I think that really summarizes what you think of yourself and the top skills that you're presenting to a prospective employer. With applications, I think we see a lot of generic applications where we know that's not been sent to us personally, that's been sent to everybody. And it's really important to personalize it. So you've actually shown that you can research the firm. And a lot of the people that get interviews at Monagosit, they've done their research. So when the senior partners interview them, they can talk about what they know, and that always impresses them. The feedback that we get is when someone comes in and says, "Oh yeah, you did this case or you did that," and they've bothered, and it shows that you have a specific interest. So they would be my top tips, Francine.
Yeah, and I think the research part is really important in that when if you get to that next stage, you get it, well, you need it for your CV and your form, but if you then get to the next stage, a firm is going to ask you, aren't they, about tell me what you think about our firm, or what could we do better? And those are the kind of things that that your firm might ask.
Absolutely. And we ask people questions, why are you interested in criminal law? What is it that interests you? And if somebody doesn't know the first thing about criminal law, it's obvious they're just looking for a job. And because the market is competitive, because you have students that are so hungry to work in specific areas that they've done their research, they're the ones that really will stand out. So going back to Delia's point, I think it's really important to find what you're passionate about and really follow that dream, because that will come across in interviews. And you can see on the work experience placements as well, you can see people that are really interested and those that are ticking boxes.
Yeah. And what does a good interested person look like in a firm? How do they show up, Rachel?
You definitely need to dress smartly. There are firms, I mean, my firm is boutique, so it is business dress, and that means a suit, heels, shoes. They don't have to be Louboutins, but smart shoes. I'm only laughing because for all the years I was a student, I walked around in trainers, and the day I got that training contract, I was down the shop buying heels, and I've never stepped out of them since. So I know there are a lot of firms that are more casual in terms of you can wear trainers, but when you go to an interview, you don't know what the protocol is. So you should always err on the side of caution and be conservatively dressed. That doesn't mean you need to be like done up to here, but a decent suit, what you can afford, looking smart, and looking prepared and looking like you were going to meet a client, like you are a lawyer.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think that's really important. That how you present yourself is really
mm,
important. And Delia, can I just ask you? I know that, like for example, when you did the interview for the Open Justice Internship, like it was a competence-based interview, and you had to give examples. Can you just
mhm.
talk about like what that's like and how you prep for something like that, or how you thought about prepping for a kind of that kind of interview,
Oh,
if you can
okay.
remember?
I can remember because it was one of two interviews I've had in a very, very long time. Um, so prepping for an interview, obviously you have to get an understanding of who you're interviewing for. As Rachel said, you need to do your research. It will make you stand out. You research the company, you research their policies, you research the work that they've done recently, because at the end of the day, you see yourself working there. So why wouldn't you? You should have an interest in who you want to work for and why you want to work for them. And as I said before, passion, you need to have that passion for the thing that you're going for. So you obviously sit down, you analyze your CV. There are great tools that the OU offer with CV building, even interview skills as well, the STAR technique. You just keep running through things. and get comfortable with answering questions about yourself and be confident in the work that you've done. Even if it was something you did, I don't know, 10 years ago, you can still refer to it because you've learnt those skills. Those are yours and no one can take them away. So you use them to publicize what you're good at, whether it's communication, whether you're great at organizational skills. Even if you haven't worked in an environment, you can refer back to your personal life, things that you've done, you know, even as a parent, and how you organize your time and how you organize your children and how you organize your workload. It's, you know, job as a nanny is quite expensive if you use to hire one. So, you know, just look at your skills and look at your CV, and you can also go to the OU and have someone look over it for you.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, that the Careers and Employability Service are there to support you and they will help you with your CV. And I'd also say is to note down some examples of things that you've done. So when you're thinking
Yes.
about competency interviews, when someone says, give me an example of when you've worked in a team or something like, or when you've shown leadership, find those examples. And I think I said this the other night. One of the big law firms told us about an example where somebody was asked one of those questions and they talked about organising a party that had gone slightly wrong, and it bizarrely was an example that was really it was a really reflective, thoughtful answer, but really stood out because most people think, oh, I need to say something very legal related, but actually it was at the point that you've made, Rachel. It was very human. It was like, you know, they were organising a surprise party. It all went wrong, and that reflection and what I would have done differently next time is the really key thing. So don't think it always has to be something that's law related. It can be really things that you can draw on. And I'm going to do, we've got 1 minute left. I'm going to do one final question from Anik. Rachel, I'll start with you and then I'll ask Delia. Looking back at your journey, what's the one thing you did during your studies that's had the biggest impact on your career?
I think it's being able to survive through the times when they were unprecedented and have the support of the peer group of students that I was with, and getting through that time, which at some points I kept thinking, I'm not going to finish this degree and that dream is over. But I just kept pushing because I just kept thinking, put one foot in front of another and you'll get there. And I did. And so in practice now, I take that moment, and if it gets tough, I just think nothing was as tough as that. And look where I am. So if I just keep going and I just keep pushing, I'll get through it. And that was my biggest takeaway. Oh, I did have one more. I remember at the beginning, they did say to me, I shouldn't say this, Francine, because it's nothing to do with any of your departments. They did say, you do know, Rachel, that law's a really tough one, and you're trying to attempt this as a full-time student, and you have a business and 2 small children. And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
So I think that message,
I
don't
think
ever give up.
a resilience
Resilience,
is
yes,
so
that's the words.
important. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Delia, when you look back, what do you sort of think about? What's the things that you kind of are really proud about, that you've done so far?
Starting.
Mm.
Starting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I worked for myself. I was in beauty before I started my degree, and it was actually on the back of the bereavement of my grandmother. And I know for her, she said to me when I was about 12 years old, "You'll be the lawyer." And I thought, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'll do it. I've always wanted to do it. Why not? What's stopping me? And so far the journey's just been amazing, and I feel like it's just beginning. You know, I've finished my LLB, but it literally feels as though it's just beginning, and I'm just proud of just starting, seeing it through to completion,
Mm.
seeing the opportunities. And there is a little part of me that thinks, oh, well, you could have done this sooner, but everything happens at the right time, and this
Yeah.
was the right time for me.
Brilliant. And I'm sure your grandma will be super proud of
Oh,
you as well.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing. Although a lovely bit to end on. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Delia. That was such an
Thank you.
amazing conversation. Thank you for the questions that people popped in the chat and on the Q&A. I'm sure that you've all learned lots from this conversation tonight. So I'm really grateful to both Rachel and to Delia. Please check out their podcasts. Because I think you will also learn so much from those. And we will also, Rachel's going to send us a link and we'll pop it on the Open Justice website as well for her podcast. And you can see Delia's podcast on the Open Justice website as well. So
Yeah,
thank you
I've
so
put
much.
The links.
And
I've put the links in there. All I was going to say is that we've got one more session
Yes,
tomorrow.
I'm sorry,
and
I
it's
forgot.
No, don't worry. It's with Hannah Fleetwood Reed, who works for the Government Legal Department. So I'm just going to put the link to that in the chat now. And yeah, so if you're interested in that, and please come along tomorrow. It's from 12:30 to 1:30. And I was also going to just put some links in there actually for the Open Justice